The present state of design management really breaks down into issues around integration, around ownership, and around language. And so I'm going to be putting out some ideas and illustrated examples of how designers and design managers are navigating those issues. A big construct that's kind of new-ish, is this whole idea of design thinking. And so there tends to be a bit of a identity crisis in design right now, among some designers and design managers who feel a bit threatened almost by design thinking and have this fear that they won't have a seat at the table, that they won't be as necessary in the conversation and the process of innovation, while others really see it as a huge opportunity, as a platform to elevate the role of design in the process of business management and of innovation. When I was first asked to speak, I was really interested in this idea of a lingua franca, the idea of a common language between those practicing mainly in the business field and those practicing mainly in the design field. After my research and after more of my observations, I realized that probably that's not the direction we want to go to, because creating a lingua franca could actually create more complexities and less of a transparency. And I was also looking at the legal profession, for example, and in the law of politics, where there's a lot of work already being done to break down those language barriers. The real goal is access. So I give some examples of how already some people are laying out some parallels in the language between the way we think about design and the way we think about business. For example, I give an example of some visual diagramming of the design thinking process and lean startup processes. There are some interesting parallels, and even visually they're beginning to look a little bit more in common. So if I could use the phrase lingua franca more broadly, I'm really referring to the need for a common language, probably more of the distilling it down to the common denominator of how business and design communicate. Research ideas I'd like to pursue further is definitely one of ownership. And actually, one of the PhD candidates today made a really insightful comment. He said, what if instead of thinking of things in terms of ownership, we thought of it in terms of usership, which is a really provocative statement. Because once you start talking about ownership, you're really talking about issues of control. And but the irony is that in order to share, you have to own something. You can't, there's nothing to share without having first owned it. But it's much more thinking about a broad ownership and needling away at the fear. The other research area that I'm personally interested in is this idea of ambiguity and navigating ambiguity. And I think that there's a huge opportunity for design management frameworks and processes to help business understand how they can best navigate ambiguity. If you look at, on any given day, at The Economist, at the Wall Street Journal, at the Financial Times, the common theme about what businesses are faced with is navigating and managing complexity, ambiguity, uncertainty, and you clearly need more than just a SWOT analysis or a 5 bullet point step procedure to navigate that. So there's a lot that we can borrow from design, the design process, and what design management has to offer to contribute to that field. So that's a big area that I'm interested in. On an emotional level, the user, the consumer, definitely feels at odds, feels discouraged, feels at a loss of where to begin. And really the best place to begin is with a very basic level of questions that is very user-centered, to really connect the dots between understanding what, if you even framed the right question, and then dialing it back from there to understand who my user is and how best to connect with them. The idea of transferring ideas from industry back to academia and vice versa, I really believe it dials back to how we're educating business students as well as how we're educating design students, because that is really going to be the platform for how individuals and practitioners are interacting with each other, the types of questions they're asking each other, are they even curious about each other? So On the business school side, there's a huge opportunity to not only integrate processes like design thinking, but to make sure you're really teaching business students how to scale out those processes, whether it's over a 5-day period or a 5-month period. Alternatively, in design school education, there's a huge opportunity to teach real clear fundamentals of business value, and making sure that we're teaching our design students not only value the artifact, but to also value the value assigned to that artifact. And lastly, there's a lot of opportunity to integrate the two schools of thought. I think the important issue in design management is to develop a theoretical base that can really be taken seriously in academia and business schools. I think there's a huge opportunity to serve as a bridge. Just the nature of the language and the title, design management, we need more hybrid approaches today. We need more approaches that are not siloed and that are not singular in their thinking, but that are much more integrative. I think that the conference today shows a huge wealth of creative ideas, creativity among the doctoral students, among the scholars who are present. I think that we need more conferences like this to merge the two. I'd love to see more practitioners be a part of CADMC, because becomes a much more symbiotic relationship where theory and academic research can inform practice, and practitioners work can inform the research and scholarship that academics are doing.